I think it's important that young people understand what an engineering career is and have that explained to them and shown to them in its broadest sense, because I think it's absolutely clear to those of us that work in the space, pretty much anything that you're interested in could have an engineering or tech career associated with it.
Hello and welcome to the latest City and Guilds podcast. Each month we're exploring some of the challenges young people are facing as highlighted by our Youth Misspent research to help them overcome the hurdles they face entering new industries. I'm Craig Smith, Managing Director of City and Guilds Gen 2 and your host for today. Engineering is one of the most critical sectors in the UK, with almost 1 in 5 people employed in a role related to the industry, and demand for green engineering professionals has risen by 55% in the last 5 years. Engineering will, of course, be one of the sectors experiencing widespread and rapid change due to the government's commitment to address climate change, with the ambitious target of a net zero carbon emissions economy by 2050. These changes in the sector represent a unique opportunity for young people not only to step into well-paid, long-term careers, but also to play a vital role in addressing the climate crisis. Despite this, the engineering sector still faces a number of ongoing challenges. Our Youth Misspent research found that almost half of young people felt that they lacked the skills to pursue a career in engineering, and a third felt that they didn't know enough about the roles available in the sector. As well as struggling to connect with young people about the wide range of careers available in engineering, the sector also faces a historic challenge when it comes to addressing a diverse workforce. While 50% of young men we surveyed said that they would consider a career in engineering, just 20% of young women said the same. Today we will be hearing from experts from across the engineering sector who can share their insights into what work is already being done to attract young people into these jobs, as well as sharing their first-hand experience into what it's like to pursue a career in engineering. Now, if I could ask our guests for today's podcast to please introduce themselves by telling us briefly about where they work and the job they do. Let's come to you first, Warren.
My name's Warren Page. I work at Extract Limited and we're manufacturers of motorsport and high performance automotive transmission systems. And we're based in Thatcham near Newbury.
Thank you, Warren. And Remis?
I am an engineering student. I go by Remis. I am just beginning my journey as an engineer based at a college in the south of England.
Perfect. Thank you, Remis. And Beth?
Hi, I'm Beth Elgood. I'm the Director of Communications at Engineering UK. We're a not-for-profit organisation with a purpose around driving change so that more young people choose engineering and technology careers.
Wonderful. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us today. As we've mentioned, engineering is one of the largest employment sectors in the UK, and one which is set to grow significantly over the coming years. However, it's also a sector that faces an ongoing skills challenge, due in part to an ageing workforce, with a 2020 report finding that almost 20% of engineers in the UK due to reach retirement age by 2026. Addressing this shortage will require employers and the skills sector to work together to attract more young people into these rewarding roles, highlighting the benefits a career in engineering can offer. That's why I'd like to start today by asking my guests a little bit about what first appealed to them about a career in the sector. So Remis, let's start with you. As someone who's currently studying to pursue a career in engineering, what led you to decide to make a career in the sector?
Well, when I was growing up, I was always interested in creating something and making things. Working with my hands was always a dream of mine. And as I grew older, I learned different career opportunities from my secondary school. Over time, I began a bit more research into the engineering department and figured that electrical and mechanical engineering was just what I wanted to do.
Perfect, thank you. And Beth, how about yourself?
So I'm not an engineer, I have to fess that up now, but I do recognise the really huge impact that engineers have on all of our lives, how vital they are to all of our futures. And I'm also really aware of the kind of huge number of really interesting careers that are out there for young people, and at a time when we're all facing quite tough economic times, and when young people are very concerned about job availability, job security and pay, it's really important that young people from all backgrounds are really well informed about the whole range of engineering technology careers. And so while I'm not an engineer, I've always had a passion for education and the way that that can transform lives, and the role that Engineering UK plays in terms of looking at the need for there to be people entering the engineering and technology workforce, and having a role to encourage young people to do that is really what first encouraged me, I guess, into working in this space.
Thanks, Beth. And Warren?
On the other end of the spectrum. So I started my apprenticeship in engineering in 1973. I always liked making things when I was young, and that's what I wanted to do, as my father was an engineer in the aerospace industry, and he was a designer, so I wanted to follow suit. So then I found an apprenticeship, went through that for 6 years. I was fortunate enough to work for a machine tool manufacturer, and that's what got me to specialise in gear manufacture, which I've done all of my career. And now in the last 20 years, I've been involved in learning and development and running our apprenticeship at Extract, which has grown throughout that time to something quite large now. So it's been an interesting journey and something I thoroughly enjoyed.
Brilliant, thanks, Warren. And interestingly, that's it's probably worth saying I started my career in engineering as an engineering apprentice with National Grid years gone by, and yeah, similar things there kind of resonate with me. Really, it was about wanting to understand things, and also wanting a career that, at the time, I was kind of I guess Blair government days of 50% of young people going to university. So I was kind of going the other way into an apprenticeship, much against the views of my peers, really. So it was a fairly big step going into engineering, but absolutely one I do not regret. It's been a great career so far for me. So yeah, some of those comments really resonate. So thank you for those, everybody. So we've already mentioned the large number of young people who feel that they don't know enough about the roles open to them in the engineering sector. However, we know that there have already been employers really proactively reaching out to young people to improve their awareness of the wide range of routes available to enter the sector, whether that's through apprenticeships or the various other educational pathways. So the question is, what more needs to be done, really, to amplify the message and ensure more young people are considering careers in this area? Remis, it'd be great to start with you. How did you become aware of the opportunities that were available to take on a career in engineering? And also, do you feel that your school or college provided you with the right information you needed to understand what options were available?
I first learned about engineering job sectors in secondary school. I was given a fair amount of folders that highlighted different career paths, and one described different types of engineers available in the army. And I took one look at some of those roles, and I knew that I wanted to become an engineer. So I was looking around colleges, and honestly, the college I attend now is absolutely amazing. I could not have asked for better education, and not only are they providing me with every information I need, everything I asked for, all of my questions were answered. They also set up a program where we do certain set weeks of work experience in engineering companies out there, so we can gain experience firsthand.
Oh, that sounds amazing, Remis. It's really great to hear. So, Warren, from an employer's perspective, what work are Extract currently doing to engage with schools and colleges to communicate with young people? And I guess more broadly, and Beth will have a view on this, given your role at Engineering UK, are there more opportunities, do you think, that employers could be highlighting the different kinds of opportunities that are available out there?
To highlight the opportunities, we're bearing in mind that the careers advice is not very good at schools or non-existent. We as an employer are going out to schools and colleges. We do activity days as well as career fairs. So the activity days are a structured 30 minutes session where we be part of a lesson. And this is for primary schools as well. So we look at gearing, because that's what we do. We make transmission systems, and we finish off with assembly of a sports car gearbox. It's quite simple, easy for them to do, and that gets them talking. We did it to primary school 2 weeks ago, and that really got them talking, and it's still got them talking now. So it has had an impact. For that sort of work, that's very important to bring across. And if other employers could take that into schools, which they do, that would be a great help. We also are involved with Teen Tech as well, which is an activity day where schools go into a central place where employers have activities. So all that sort of work is really crucial for engineers of the future.
Sounds great, Warren. Beth, from your perspective, what more do you think employers could be doing?
When we look at this from within Engineering UK, we've looked at what it is that young people need in order to be able to join the engineering and technology workforce. And we look at it in terms of them needing the skills required to become an engineer, knowing what roles are available and how to get into those roles. And they need to be inspired into the profession and to be able to see themselves working in engineering. And as you said at the front of this, Craig, that there's a gap there where young people don't necessarily know what engineers do, or indeed know what subjects and qualifications they need in order to become an engineer. And there is a real disparity across genders and indeed other kind of measures of diversity there. So there really is clearly a gap to be filled. There's a wide community, including employers, including organisations like ourselves, including the professional engineering institutions, including all sorts of organisations whose pure role is around engaging with young people in kind of engineering outreach activity. And it's really important, I think, to make sure that those activities, whether those are led by employers or by others, reach a diverse group of young people. So probably it is inexcusable, I would say, that as a workforce, engineering so underrepresents women, as an example. And if we're talking about there being a skills gap, we need to reach all of the UK's demographic in order to both get the numbers in, but also get the diversity of thought into engineering that's needed. Separately, we've done some research that suggests that those students who attend a STEM careers activity of some type are 3.5 times more likely to know about what people working in engineering do, and 3.4 times more likely to consider a career in engineering. So there's clearly something that is able to be addressed there, and the sort of activity that Warren just talked about in terms of reaching out into schools. I think it's important that young people understand what an engineering career is and have that explained to them and shown to them in its broadest sense, because I think it's absolutely clear to those of us that work in the space that if you pretty much anything that you're interested in could have an engineering or tech career associated with it. So I think that's really important. I think some contextualizing perhaps of the learning that our young people do in school and linking classroom activities to the sorts of careers that they might go on into is really important. I've seen for myself, so Engineering UK runs the Big Bang Fair, and we welcome thousands of young people usually to the NEC every year to do some hands-on activity, but also to talk to employers of engineers. And you really see that when young people see what an engineering career might be, see a young person that looks a little bit like them doing those sorts of careers, you can really kind of ignite a bit of a spark in those young people. So I think it's a bunch of things. I also think it's really important that when we're engaging in this kind of activity, we measure what's going well, what has a positive impact, and share that learning amongst this very broad community of us all working in this space.
Perfect. Thank you all. That's really interesting. I think that it sounds like there's a myriad of great work going on out there, and really heartening to hear from Remis there on the experience that you've had. And I guess the more we can learn from each other and amplify that, we're just going to drive increased impact across the sector, which is a big opportunity for us. So that's great. Thank you, everybody. My next question, I'd like to expand a little bit on some of the barriers that young people believe they face when it comes to pursuing a career in engineering. Specifically, almost half of young people believe they lack the skills required for a career in engineering. However, it's clear that there are a wide range of roles, as you've just referenced there, Beth, within the engineering sector, some of which will, of course, require specific technical skills, but many others, particularly at an entry level, place much more emphasis on the value of soft skills. So Warren, Beth, it'd be great to hear from you guys first around some of the less known career paths within the engineering sector and the kinds of skills that employers value outside of the harder technical skills. Is it possible for young people to begin work with an employer and develop the technical skills on the job?
What we're faced with is some schools do not do design and technology for whatever reason. Some of it is due to funding. Really, these are helpful. The same as GCSE engineering, at many schools this isn't an option. You probably count on one hand within the area between Hampshire, Berkshire, Surrey. You probably count on one hand how many actually do that. It is increasing, but it's not enough because the sector's not represented in engineering. From that, what we have to work with, if they've done physics and mathematics, then you've got some keys to work with. Within the apprenticeships at Extract, we actually make sure that we cover everything they need to cover for their career. We are doing the training for a career, not a job. So that's very important to put that through, and it's structured within our apprenticeship. Whether it's a level 2 apprenticeship, a level 3 apprenticeship, or level 6, the core is exactly the same. So we make sure that all core skills are covered, and within the engineering sector, then they've got plenty of scope to actually seek employment all the way through careers unless they wish to change further on. But an apprenticeship in engineering will cover you for most things in life. That's what I found personally. I think that is quite key for us.
Thanks, Warren. How about yourself, Beth?
Yeah, I agree in terms of apprenticeships there, Warren. I think if we look at routes into engineering as they currently stand, the main routes into engineering, I think those are through degrees, through apprenticeships, and through vocational qualifications. Obviously, our T levels, where those are 2-year courses taken after GCSEs, broadly equivalent to 3 A levels, and they're new. And I think the first cohort to take T levels in engineering and manufacturing actually started in September last year, while some of the other T levels are kind of slightly better bedded in. And I think what's interesting about those is that they offer a combination of classroom-based learning alongside an industry placement of 45 days. So I think that means a split of 80% classroom, 20% work, and therefore at that age are providing young people with an opportunity to do some classroom learning and then to put that into practice and to gain a bit of first-hand experience in terms of what going to work looks like and feels like, and to understand their future career opportunities. As Warren was describing, apprenticeships are so traditionally a pathway into engineering and technology careers, and something where both businesses and young people actually really see that as an important route into skilled employment. I think we're doing some work on apprenticeships actually at the moment, and what we have seen is a decline in the number of the younger, so 16 to 18-year-olds going into apprenticeships. And I think that's something that is of concern and something that we should collectively be looking at. In terms of kind of the wider skills, so we've just commissioned and published some work by Lightcast, who are labour market analysts, and they do a big trawl of lots of huge databases and look at the sorts of skills that are being highlighted in job ads. And I think, therefore, in terms of those wider skills needs, obviously we know that engineers are creative problem solvers and who are right there at the heart of, sorting us out, really. So alongside specialist skills that are needed for those kinds of roles, the Lightcast analysis drew out some common other skills, things like communication skills, management skills, customer service, digital skills, problem solving skills. And as Warren was saying, I think those are skills that you can start to learn at school, but those are skills that you will develop when you're working in an engineering role. And there is that kind of need, therefore, for those young people to come with as much of that as they can and to develop those on the job, which apprenticeships provides a really good opportunity to do.
Perfect. Thanks, Warren, Beth. That's really interesting. I mean, there's a number of challenges facing young people, I think, and what you touched on there's interesting, Beth, around the decline in younger people taking on apprentices. I hear from our learners around some of the challenges that young people face financially and taking entry-level jobs because they pay now rather than entering certain educational routes is a real difficult decision right now for people. So maybe one for another podcast, eh? So, Remis, I'd like to turn to you now to ask a little bit more about your own experience as a learner in engineering. Could you tell us a little bit about the kinds of skills that you've developed or made use of outside of the more technical training you've received?
Inside my course, we have different branches, different classes, and different lecturers that teach us different units. I have learned so many of the business skills, so many of the mathematical side, the mechatronics side, the electrical principles. We are taught how to handle the basic hand tools alongside learning how to use our first machines. And honestly, it has been such a large amount of information, and it seems to be in such a short period of time. But it's a challenge that my course seems to be more than willing to be able to take. We have learned so many different pathways that are available to us through our work experience, through our lecturers, through our coursework. It's all so different, and at the same time, it's all connected in so many different ways.
Great, thanks, Remis. That's really interesting. There's a colleague that I used to work with years ago at National Grid who used to talk about an education for a career, and it sounds like that's exactly what you're getting there, Remis. So I'm sure it'll serve you well in the years to come in your career. So moving on slightly, we mentioned earlier how the face of the engineering sector is changing in the face of a new emphasis on green skills and helping the UK transition to a net zero economy. This is going to mean many people in the sector needing to develop new skills to complement their existing expertise, while also creating opportunities for young people pursuing a career in engineering to consider new roles being created in evolving industries. In fact, the number of adverts for engineering jobs requiring a green skill has increased by nearly half, rising by 48% to 212,000 jobs postings in the year 21-22, and that's only since 2019. So Beth, Warren, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on the kinds of skills the sector is going to need in the coming years and the kinds of areas that we're likely to see significant growth, and how can we encourage young people to consider careers in these emerging areas?
So absolutely, as you've just articulated, Craig, looking to the future, we all know it's both a national and a global imperative that we've got the workforce to improve environmental sustainability and achieve net zero. And everything that we know says that the activities and the skills of those people employed in engineering will be critical in terms of achieving that. So as an example, there was a Green Jobs Task Force report in 2021 that suggested that about 500,000 new engineering and manufacturing jobs would be needed to support the green economy by 2050, with something like 2/3 of those by 2030. And the overall engineering footprint, as it were, is becoming greener, with ever more engineering job postings having that green job title or requiring green skills. And I think it's both new jobs actually, and also kind of traditional civil or mechanical engineering jobs becoming greener. And you talked about some of the statistics there. We've seen an uptick in the number of job ads for things like environmental engineers, renewable engineers, environmental consultants, and those kinds of things. I think other skills, other sort of new areas or growing areas as far as engineering is concerned will be in things around chemical and biomedical, automation, robotics, AI, those kinds of things. In terms of young people and those careers, I think that we talked a little bit earlier, I think that sometimes young people aren't aware that something they're really interested in or passionate about is something that might be addressable, so to speak, by an engineering career. So we know that young people are passionate about the environment. You know, we see it in every survey that we ever read. We've had the school strikes led by Greta Thunberg, and very locally to what I do, we see increasing numbers of young people who submit project work to the Big Bang competition that has an environmental theme, but those young people don't necessarily make the link between all of those things and a career in engineering. And yet we know that if young people agree that engineers are more important for improving the environment, they're 7 times more likely to be interested in a career that involves engineering than those that don't. So I think there's something there about really bringing to life how engineering is at the heart of addressing some of these environmental issues, if we look at that green piece in the first instance, because the more that young people are aware of that, the more likely they are to think about a career in engineering that would enable them to address that.
Sounds like a real opportunity there, Beth, for us to leverage that interest and passion in engineering to attract people into the sector based on the impact they can have through an engineering role. So yeah, that's a really interesting point. Warren, great to hear your thoughts also.
Yes, the green side of engineering is now integral within the apprenticeship standards. Some of them it's a very small amount. We have looked at different things within our apprenticeships. Some of the BTEC projects that some of our apprentices have done is solar panels on the factory roof, wind turbines. This was 12 years ago. So it's young people thinking forward and driving it, and us listening to them is quite important, which is what Beth alluded to. I think looking at power consumption within factories, how to look at what we use, whether it's electricity, gas or whatever, is to bring that down and actually contribute to our net zero side of it. I think within apprenticeships, that's quite good to do. It's actually in a curriculum then, and going forward, to be honest, for things that have to be done by 2030, we haven't got a lot of time, because an apprenticeship cycle is 4 years plus experience, so you start to run out of time to put things in place and get them correct. But they're within the T-level structure as well, so things are being done, and going forward, I think they will gain momentum with the young people as well.
Right, that's great to hear, Warren. Thank you. So, Remis, speaking from a learner's perspective, what do you think can be done to encourage young people to consider careers in these new greener engineering areas that Beth and Warren have just mentioned?
If I'm completely honest, I believe that the only thing that can be done is by continuing to spread awareness to people younger, to people who are in the secondary and primary schools, who are looking to make a career plan for their future. Without the education of what there is out there, I was only able to figure out what I wanted at the very beginning of my college year. I only, through looking around the college itself, only realized what the engineering department was really all about. It's a really slow process, but the education, the awareness spreading, that is all you can really do, except advertising. Just constant awareness needs to be spread about everything that there is to offer.
Brilliant, thanks, Remis. I mean, that's a really good point, which links to Beth and Warren have already said, really, around time. It does take time, but we don't really have a lot of that time. So I think, yeah, the more we can support employers to be out in schools, selling the virtues of careers in engineering, helping young people understand the sector, how they can fit, can only be a good thing. Okay, brilliant. So thanks very much to all of you for sharing your insights and opinions on the future of engineering in the UK. It's really been fascinating to hear from all of you about the challenges and the potential solutions to getting more young people interested in considering a career in engineering. We're almost out of time, but before we go, I'd like to pose our special magic wand question to our guests. So in 20 seconds or less, if you had a magic wand, what is the most important thing that you think can be done to encourage young people to consider careers in engineering in the coming years? Let's go to you first, Warren, please.
I think one of the best things that we can do is actually put it in schools and within careers advice. So whether it's in the curriculum and going forward to advice given and driving from that.
Thanks, Warren. And Remis?
I would extend the time period that we have to continue learning, because it is a pressured field. You have so much to learn, and with such a short deadline, it's nearly impossible to know exactly what you need to know.
Thank you. And finally, Beth?
I think I would say we should work together as an overall engineering community to show the young people that there's an engineering role out there that can address their personal passions and purpose. That's well paid and that has multiple routes in, and to really spend some time working out where and how in the system we're able to do that.
Thanks, Beth. And I think similar to you, if I had a magic wand, I would work across the sector to give young people like Remis the fantastic experience that it sounds like she's having there. So that would be my magic wand if I had one. Okay, so thank you very much to all of our listeners and guests for joining us today. I hope all of you listening have enjoyed hearing from our panelists and gaining some new insights from their experience. Engineering is a vital sector in the UK and around the world, and one that is set to see huge changes in the coming years as changes in policy and technology drive innovation and a need for new skills. Making the most of these changes will require bringing more young people into the sector, with employers, government and educators working together to demonstrate the rewards that a career in engineering can offer. As we've heard today, there's already some fantastic work being done to help achieve these goals, and hopefully this conversation has helped spark some ideas amongst our listeners as well. Thank you again to all our listeners for tuning in to the latest podcast in this series. If you'd like to hear more, you can follow this series. If you have any comments or questions, do please reach out to us on social media at City and Guilds. You can also find our accounts highlighted in the description, where you'll also find a link to our Youth Misspent report. It's time for us to sign off for now, but we'll be back in September. Hope to see you all soon.